We have just been chatting about the different aspects of galleries and art and the different areas of making art, and it's worth having it on a recording, isn't it, instead of just
definitely. And I think so. Simon and I talked about this, that once a month we meet up and we discuss these things, what's been going on, in our lives, what's going on in art, everything from galleries to our own practice to books we're reading. And because I'm not involved in as many or any interviews anymore, just because of time pressures, that Simon and I, our first meeting was on Simon's podcast a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
And we just had such conversational flow that kind of expanded beyond the boundaries of the interview podcast, whether with guests or ourselves. So we thought what we'd do is once a month do a catch up and talk about all of these things we share in common, and have a bit of a conversation. So we were doing it over a cup of coffee or a pint or something like that, and record it, but also bring my kind of experience and knowledge, and Simon's experience and knowledge to it as well.
There's so many times when we're just chatting and it's not being recorded. I just think this would be perfect. It'd be perfect for a segment. People would be really interested in this, and it's usually self-structured as we talk about the gallery and how it's going for you. We'll talk about books that we've been reading, or we'll talk about art practices and teaching or whatever it is, and I just think this is all could be shared with the audience, really, which would be really nice. Obviously you're in your beautiful gallery now and beautifully lit with the morning light. So how is it going at the gallery currently?
Yeah, it's going really well. So I've had it for 1 year now, 1 year yesterday. So it's been a real journey. It's been open for a couple of weeks now and will run until the 12th of January. So I've had the gallery for 1 year, and I was looking for somewhere in Norfolk when I moved here that I could show my work, and I didn't apply or approach anywhere. I was just sussing it out, and I kind of thought I want to do something different, and if I could get a space that I could maybe use as a studio, as a pop-up gallery space, as a workshop space, I would go for it. And then I saw this come up, and it just looked too amazing not to take that opportunity and to take that risk, really, and open it. And so I opened it 1 year ago and just put my own work on the walls, and didn't really do any branding or promotion at that time, just enough. And it went really well.
So people have been coming in with their phone, you say, just to show you images. Can we hear about, is that a common thing, and what's the better way of approaching this type of introduction?
Yeah. So maybe what I could do actually is I could actually maybe share my screen and show what I've wrote on the website, and I'll also talk through it as well for those that are listening. So this is the gallery website. There's the current exhibition. These are also the artists we represent. So Hannah Ivory Baker, myself, Gabriella Buckingham, Sarah Bird, Kester Hugh Crawford, Jill Edwards, Julie Green, Bridget Greenwood, Bethany Holmes, Liz James, Claire Oxley, Louisa Longstaff, Scales, Daniel Shadbolt, NEAC, Tushar Sabale, Mark Stopforth, and Michael Weller, NEAC. So these are all professional artists, and so what we look for is people really with a body of work that we can rely on as well, in that sense. So I'm going to go to the submissions page. Now this came about, and I didn't realise just how much it would happen. I kind of guessed it would, and heard from other gallery owners that when you have a gallery, you will get approached a lot via email, via DM, in person. And the majority of the time, I would say 99% of the time, you're going to have to say no, just because of the amount of submissions you get. But also, there are ways to do it for artists so that you can not have that disappointment. What we look for, professional or semi-professional artists with a demonstrable body of work that is easily accessible online via an up-to-date website, including the website of other galleries, and or an active social media presence. Whilst a strong exhibition history, gallery representation and CV helps, it's not essential. We are always willing to work with emerging artists who demonstrate professionalism and a vision that aligns with ours. We do not care about or factor in academic qualifications. It's all about the work and the style, vision and professionalism of the artist. So representation is different to being invited to exhibit in one of our curated exhibitions. Our representation procedure is solely for artists with whom we've built a relationship through frequent exhibitions or other factors. The most important thing is that the work is in sync with the kind of work we exhibit in the gallery. Like artists, galleries also have a style and aesthetic. This takes a little research from the artist to understand as much as they can about the gallery they are approaching. If you believe your work will fit, then an accompanying note about why will always help. Is there a particular artist's work in a gallery you can relate to? Have you visited one of our exhibitions or seen it online? Do you think your work would have looked great in one of our previous or current exhibitions? If so, tell us why. So what I'm saying there is, like, don't just randomly approach galleries. Get to know them and see, does your work fit? If you think it does, sort of explain why. You know, hopefully what I was trying to do there is provide some good information and also help myself in the meantime. But if ever we do get submissions now, or people ask, or people come in, we just say, go and look on the website. There's all of the information there needed.
Yeah. Well, there are different tiers of galleries, aren't there? And I think that what you're showing people is that it's not the requirements of a high street gallery that will just have a walk-ins, and if they, you know, if you fill in an application or whatever, you'll be in. There are tiers to gallery systems, and you're catching people on, as you say, on a trajectory of a career path, and people who put the work in and show a true intention to growth and artistic just kind of passion and an intention with their work. And that's, I think, why there are different requirements for a gallery like yours than there will be for other galleries people may come across, which do have more pop art looking or pet portraits friendly galleries, which are all fine in their own rights, but they're a different area of exhibition than what you're really producing. And that's what people really, I think, don't always understand.
Yeah,
they want introduction to your gallery as easily as others, and that's probably where you find people tripping over themselves a little bit.
And I think it's also important why to be confident in what you're doing, in that sense, to have built up a bit of a portfolio, to develop your style, to maybe have done a few small exhibitions, maybe sold some of your work privately. When you then get ghosted by a gallery or whatever, it's not going to absolutely devastate you, because you know you've got that platform. And what I'm trying to sort of say in that is that your work might not be right for our gallery, but it might be for somewhere else. If you go in too soon and put all of your hopes and dreams into that, it's going to hurt and knock your confidence a lot. But if you build that confidence by having that strong platform, you've got, you know, people that comment on your work or like it, you know that at least it has an audience. It's just waiting for the right time to find that best avenue for that.
That's great. That's great advice. I think everyone's going to be now analysing and scrutinising their own work and thinking about where they are in their own journey through art making and selling their art. And it's an interesting point to turn the lens on yourself sometimes. It's a really healthy thing to do. So yeah, do you think we should transition to talking about art
absolutely
now and making art? How has your year been as far as art making goes? Because you have stretched yourself thin this year, so I can imagine that's had its effect on what you do.
It's been difficult, to be honest, because of that stretching myself thin, but also moving house and everything that relates to that, and I'm starting to put some new work together for Hannah's gallery, Highgate Contemporary, but it's sort of within my own kind of thing, and it not be this sort of hard pressure to get things done for an exhibition. So looking forward to that. I've been painting quite a few still lifes as well, which I enjoy, but it's a total different mindset to doing it. And trying to traverse the two things. So the landscape is this wide open space, and the still life is this small intimate space. But I'm actually looking forward to, in 2025, starting to maybe go down a bit of a figurative route as well. I'm going to start going to life drawing classes, and it's something I've been dabbling with in the background, a little bit of, not portraiture, but figurative within an interior. I love artists like Bonnard and Vuillard and Matisse, and so just bring a bit of that element in. But like with all of these things, like the still life painting, I kind of do it in the background, and then very sort of the parallel to the advice I was giving there, wait for the right time to start dropping it into my my main body or my main structure, is work on it, get it to a point where I feel and then sort of bring it into the world. When you feel like you're churning out the same kind of stuff, but it, I don't think it's anything. It's not a cynical thing. It's like, well, this is what I'm known for, and this is what sells. But artists are generally inspired, usually by one or two subject matter. And for me, it's been the skies and stuff for many years. Now, with those, I can do them very, very naturally and almost spontaneously. But creativity is something that needs challenge. It needs some resistance. So after a while, when one paints skies or whatever subject it is, there's a little bit of a lack of that kind of grit and frustration and almost angst that again creativity thrives on. So that's why I shifted to the still life. And I think from the outside, it always looks like there's there's almost a tranquility or fluidity to artists' shifts into different styles that they're somehow just like, oh, I'm inspired by that. I'll paint that now. But often there's other things behind it, which is like frustration, familiarity, needing challenge, and you hear this with just sort of finished listening to audiobook, because a book on Matisse is just brilliant, and just seeing again, it's like this constant need to reinvent himself, and that was a lot of the time that he was just like extremely creative, but he would be an outsider, so he'd produce some new work, everybody would hate it, and laugh at it, and then they'd come to accept it, and it'd be part of the the mainstream, and then he just completely changed his style because he was almost bored of it or didn't want that. He wanted the acceptance and then didn't want it when it arrived and changed. But I think with it as well, again, it comes down to that creative energy that, an artist likes a challenge, but has to some extent nowadays, I think, do it mindfully, where their main body of work, their main style or subject matter is there and it's solid, that the foundations are solid there. But then just in the background, you can do these other little things which take time to learn and to do, and that it have a kind of a synchronicity with what they already do. That you can look at one of my still lifes and you can look at one of my landscapes and think, it's by the same artist, even though it's a different subject matter.
Yeah, it's almost the same as with Gustav Klimt. He's not known for his landscape painting, but when you see that that's what he's done, it has the same voice, even though it's covering different ground, and it's just beautiful to discover a different thread to his or string to his bow, I should say, because of how successful he was with his figures in an embrace and all these lovely gold leaf patterned work, and then to see his landscape work being so textured with paint is a beautiful discovery. And I think it's not as well known as it probably should be, but it's a similar thing where he's known for one thing, but he did create another with just as much passion and as much vigor as any artist would, really.
Absolutely. And it's very much so I think like late modernism in that sense. So early-ish modernism around, say, Impressionism and Klimt and Expressionism. The artists tended to, you look at Van Gogh or Matisse or Monet or whoever, they paint landscapes, they paint still lifes, they paint portraiture and all of that stuff. But I think something shifted around the time of, say, abstract expressionism, where you would see artists really sort of singularly kind of focusing then on a style, so Rothko, for example, Rothko didn't then sort of jump to painting portraits or still lives or have it in the background. He had this sort of singular vision. But I think nowadays, we're able to very much sort of embody these two aspects. But I think artists, have to be a little bit careful with it in that sense. That, especially working with galleries or trying to sell out work online or whatever, but you do need something that is a recognisable, for lack of a better terms, product. But collectors are going to want to collect something because they say, oh, that is a Daniel Schachter, that is a Bridget Greenwood. They can see that. What that does, and it gives the artist then, because they're already established, that little bit of, not luxury, but a little bit of freedom to experiment in different ways, but don't throw the old or the established out. That radical shift and denouncing what they did before is not a good idea.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because when you say that, it made me think about when I do edit the podcast and I'm looking for when I've asked the artist about the galleries they're associated with, and I look on a gallery website at the artists, I can scroll down without reading the names and find the artist because of the aesthetic of their work. You're finding their voice, aren't you, from the image, and it's very clear and loud that they speak. So that's how I find their work on every website, and it has been really pleasant to see how consistent that is with our guests, how you can do that simply
yeah,
by just scrolling through and just knowing what their
yeah,
brushstrokes look like and what their lens on the world is,
yeah.
really speaks to you so clearly that that you can find their work just like that. You know, it's
And,
great.
and that's why style is, I think it is extremely important.
Yeah.
It really is. And it takes a long time to develop that, or it can take a short time. You know, but the key is that it's repetition, it's, you know, dedication. But I think the key factor, and I've learned this as a painter myself, but also having the gallery, that your work has to have a style. And like you say, Simon, that you can visually recognize it straight away. You know, sometimes you don't even have to know the artist's name. You know, that's not that important, but that visual language is super important.
Mm.
I think when I go plein air painting, I'm not sure what it is. I almost can't concentrate. It sounds strange that I'm just too sort of caught up in being out and being there. Yet when I sort of scurry back to my studio with all of these thoughts and ideas and sketches, then I can really paint and translate that experience. But I'm going to try to be outdoors a lot more. Maybe not this time of year. I mean, I absolutely love it. I still go in the sea, not every morning at the moment, but you know, at least 3 times a week. And I absolutely love it. But I do like, you know, having my music on and painting and being in the warm studio as well. But I like the plein air thing, if only for the kind of elemental and romantic kind of aspects of it. On a practical level, despite buying pretty much every piece of equipment and all of that, and I've got everything set up in my studio. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, because it has the best and worst aspects of both of those things with life drawing. So I'm keen to see what your experience of that will be, because it has that overstimulation of the environment and the time constraints to do something, and yet it reaps the benefits of the engagement with the subject and that kind of just that constant focus on one thing and knowing that you're there with a purpose. So that's another thing which I'm constantly doing, is joining a French life drawing group as well. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about that soon.
Yeah,
Do that.
yeah, me too. And you know, I do like it. I love figurative work, but again, when it's verging on that semi-abstract, I don't think that's, but more impressionist in that sense. I don't, you know, lean towards photorealism, but I've created my space, my flat now, it's got lots of like nice kind of backdrops and throws and materials and books and plants and chaise longues and stuff like that. So creating this you know, this space which is very paintable, and you know, to work then with, you know, a few people I know and know well as models. So it's very much within that space and that comfort and that intimacy to create the work, and then go and do the life drawing classes for that discipline. And I did start actually earlier this year to do a little bit of figurative painting with someone, and just translating or moving over the brushwork, the palette knife work that I use with still life and the landscapes, and putting it together like that. it's a similar thing I'm looking for again. It's that moment in time. It's something that isn't quite resolved. That's got that slight kind of scratchy feel to it. It's like a half of a still life. And so in the background, that's what I'm going to be doing in 2025.
Excellent. No, I can't wait. Well, all good things to come for, this will be published in 2025 because this is this is the new sub-series that we're creating. So, so this is going to be once a month. We'll have this meeting. As part of this series, it may not be in every episode, but it's certainly going to be in the first few. We're also going to cover art books, and I've done a little segment for a book that I'm going to introduce now, which is Kenneth Jameson's You Can Draw. This is a book I lent from a friend of mine, and as much as it's about drawing, I don't think there's any good reason why you can't paint the same way that he talks about drawing. So here's my segment about what I saw in You Can Draw. When my friend lent me this book, I was interested in some of the early ideas, so I'm going to read from the start of A Pocket How to Do It, You Can Draw by Kenneth Jameson. Number 1, beginning. Adding shape to shape. One approach is to look closely at the subject carefully to isolate the shapes and relate them one to another. This requires not mere looking, but seeing. Everybody can train himself or herself to see. There is much more than muscular coordination or physical skill. It is also and mainly the result of careful observation. There is a tendency in the experienced person to see only half of the subject. Let me explain what I mean. All the shapes are important, and to the artist, the between shapes are probably more important. Now, it goes on to study the shape above. It's the between shape taken from the still life, a photograph of which you see in figure 1. See if you can find this shape in the photograph. Do not turn to the next page until you have found it. When you have found it, you will see that the line at the top of the between shape is part of a leaf, and that the upper left is part of the stalk, and that the lower left is part of the potted plant. Now turn over. Another between shape has been added above the first shape. Check it in the photograph. Notice how by drawing 2 between shapes we have produced the stalk of the lower right leaf. Remember that you must look right through the subject from back to front, from side to side and from top to bottom, if you are to see all the lines which join up to make the shapes. Carry a small sketchbook in your handbag or pocket. It is amazing what daily 5-minute drawing will yield in progress over a short time. In order to carry out the exercise outlined in this first series of illustrations, you don't need any mystical gift. All you require are eyes, determination and perseverance. Produce at least 1 drawing a day in this manner for, say, 3 months, and long before the end of that time you will be drawing easily and confidently and wondering why you ever thought it difficult. Progress will be slow at first, but it is astonishing how soon it becomes easier to see the shapes and easier to put them down on paper. So, some of the tips in this book are relating to a still life setup where you have several items, but for this demonstration I'm just going to focus on how to break down complex shapes using this method of observing the between shapes. I found this really interesting and enjoyable to see the form reveal itself as the book mentions. It's a simple exercise and it's a beginner's book, but I still think it's really important to go back to certain things like this and try them out. And it's still a really healthy practice to return to observing the negative space and using that technique in order to create a piece of work based on those observations. The rest of this book also has interesting tips and tricks. It's a pleasant book that's a little dated in how it's written, but I still recommend it. All right, I hope you enjoyed this segment, and now back to the show. There we are. That is our new series that we are going to do, one every month. to catch up, to talk about galleries, to talk about art making, and maybe once in a while to introduce a book and an idea behind a bit of art history and have a chat about that. So I hope you enjoyed the series. It's been lovely catching up with you as always, Richard. Thank you very
You
much.
too, Simon.